Okay, so what did I come for? Why am I here?
Exactly.
For the hors d'oeuvres after? They were cold. Okay?
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to After Broadway, the podcast where we deep dive into anything and everything musical theater. I'm Tara.
I'm Stefania.
And in today's episode, we're talking about the touring production of Some Like It Hot.
Can we talk about this ugly program?
It's hideous.
It's
because
nothing.
If you remember the poster on Broadway, it was kind of beautiful.
Yes. I feel like it was like a sunset, a person in a dress.
Yes, the two of them as musicians in the background. It looked very similar to me of like the Dirty Rotten Scoundrels poster, which we will definitely talk about because I think there's a lot of similarities there. But yeah, this is giving budget tour production of Some Like It Hot.
I agree.
But who chooses this? Is this a Mirvish thing? Is this the touring houses thing? I'm so curious.
Yeah, I mean, they must provide, Mirvish with graphics to use.
I will say this does perfectly match the decor of the Ed Mirvish Theater currently.
Like the navy, the gold, yes. It is still Cursed Child.
It's giving Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. Literally every time I go into that theater, I always forget about the single aisle and quickly am reminded of the center aisle when someone shows up late for a performance and has to disturb at least 25 people.
Yes, because there's not... To get anywhere, you have to walk through every single person. No, it's not good. I know.
Anyway, Some Like It Hot was recently here in Toronto at the Big Theater, the CAA at Mirvish. I believe this is year one of this tour, but maybe I'm completely wrong on this.
I think you're correct because the North American tour launched in September 2024 in Schenectady, New York.
Okay.
And it is currently still ongoing. We're 6 months in, if that.
And
we have the original tour cast.
To quote Joshua Chong, which I will be quoting him maybe a few times in this episode from the Toronto Star, he said that this feels like this tour has been running for years in terms that it's kind of lazy, guys. That's not a good review to put out on a tour that's 6 months in, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I kind of agree with him in that sometimes national tours feel just a little bit like, a cheaper version of the Broadway show, which, for the most part they are, but that, comes out in sets, obviously, smaller ensembles, and just the way that the original maybe intention of the show has been diluted when you're remounting it for tour. Mm-hmm. Some tours are so wonderful and I think really uphold the original vision, but we're two people who did not see the Broadway show, so this is our first experience of Some Like It Hot. The thing about national tours is more people will see a show on a national tour than will ever see it on Broadway. You are reaching so much more of your audience going from city to city than anyone who ever saw it at the Schubert Theater. So this is what is going to be remembered. And so, yeah, I just agree with Joshua Chong there that it didn't feel like it was the best version of this show.
Mm-hmm. And also, all that to say what you're saying is that most people are not seeing almost 50 shows a year the same way that we are seeing almost 50 shows a year. So, to the majority of these audiences, yes, this is the best that they will see because they're not traveling to New York. They're not in the process of planning a West End trip. You know what I mean? We are, I've said it before, I'll say it again, we are snobs. And so is Joshua Chong. So, I just feel that, we always have, higher standards, but maybe I just need to drop that down for national tours. But then sometimes you're pleasantly surprised, so it's hard.
Sometimes it's great. I think what the frustrating part is this is getting into I guess a bigger conversation. The frustrating part is let's say someone is a subscriber to Mirvish because they're a fan of musicals, but they're not the intense obsessive fans that we are. The idea that this is the best of the best. And, we know that there's more that they can be seeing or that they can be getting even from a national tour. And so it's frustrating when this is what we're delivering. It wasn't like bad by any means. It just kind of didn't feel
There's like
impactful.
Specific things that I think we will point out as we go along here, but I guess let's kind of like start at the beginning. We referenced Some Like It Hot only a few episodes ago because when we were going through and talking about Kimberly Akimbo and what was nominated for Best New Musical that year, which was 2022, I believe, 23? Was it 23? These two shows were nominated together, and we had said at the time that like this is probably the musical that would have given like Kimberly Kimbo a run for its money back then. Nominated for 13 Tony Awards. I believe it won 4 of the 13 nominations. I'm just double checking that. But all that to say, what was your relationship, if any, to Some Like It Hot?
Basically, I knew of the existence of the movie, but I've never seen it. I put it on the other night, but I didn't finish it. I did fall asleep. Not the movie's fault, just, my own fault. I knew Marilyn Monroe starred in it, and I knew that it starred, Tony Curtis, Jack Lemmon. Like, I knew more about its kind of cultural place than I had seen it myself. I knew that it was about men disguising themselves as women to escape a situation. That was kind of all I really knew. And then I knew it was adapted to a musical. I knew it was written by Mark Shaman and Whitman, who kind of are some of the best at writing period piece musicals. Plus, it had the song from Smash, Let's Be Bad. But that's really the end of what I knew before we saw it here in Toronto.
Yeah, I would say same as you. I've never seen the movie. Probably knew a little less about the plot. I think I maybe learned about the plot like when it was nominated for the Tonys and they showed like a little clip about this. I remember at the time, a few years ago, this was like categorized as not another Man in a Dress musical, which we will talk about the book of this musical, I think, right after this. Yeah, like me to you while we're watching this, I'm like, who played Joe on Broadway? Christian Borle.
It took us half of the musical to figure out.
It took you half of the musical. I would have never got there, I don't think.
No, we were just like, who played it? We were just naming people. And then maybe near the end of Act 1, I was just like, was it?
Christian Borle.
Christian Borle.
And then as soon as you said that, I was like, oh,
of course
yes.
It was. Of course it was.
Yeah. So it was Christian Borle as Joe / Josephine. It was J. Harrison Ghee as Jerry / Daphne / Geraldine, I think. And then, some other like players here. Adriana Hicks was Sugar. Kevin Del Aguila was Osgood. I did read a fun little fact that Casey Nicola, who directed and choreographed this, like one night went on as Spats. And I was like, oh,
that's funny.
Okay. I don't know what happened there, but went on one night. And then, yeah, as you said, a Shaman and Whitman score. And same as you, I knew that Let's Be Bad was in this. And then when we saw Smash on Broadway, we were like, wow, Let's Be Bad is in 2 musicals.
Let's Be Bad.
Crazy. I will say Let's Be Bad in this musical was like not sung by who I thought it was going to be sung by, but that's okay.
And then at the end, it kind of came back as Let's Get Good.
Yes. But I think like the next best like move here is to talk about the book of this musical, which written by Matthew Lopez and Amber Ruffin, but also like Christian Borle had his hands in some of this as well.
Oh, really?
I was reading.
I think he was involved in all of the development workshops.
I don't know why I just opened this as if it would tell me that Christian Borle did that.
I do think that, J. Harrison Ghee, Christian Borle were involved in the development of these characters and in the workshops from the beginning. So they had their hands in kind of shaping, what these characters became. I think probably specifically, because the character of Jerry / Daphne is more significantly changed probably from the original source material than this, like J. Harrison Ghee's input was valuable. I also think we should mention that Some Like It Hot was previously developed into a musical called Sugar in 1972. And so that is a more loyal adaptation. Music by Jewel Stein, lyrics by Bob Merrill. And adapted by Billy Wilder. And so that is kind of a much more loyal adaptation of Some Like It Hot as a musicalization. This is an additional one, but they really are looking at it through, or bringing a modern lens, or attempting to bring a modern lens to the storytelling, even though it still takes place in the 1930s.
So basically, like, a brief synopsis here is that in this Some Like It Hot, I know that they changed it from, like, 1929 to 1933, so this is closer to, like, the end of Prohibition in this version of Some Like It Hot. So basically, it's, like, there's, like, kind of many storylines here. I, like, have critiques that at the end of Act 1, we're introducing, like, so many new characters, and we're expected to just, like, go along with the ride as if we didn't just get 3 new characters added in the last 5 minutes of the act, but that's fine. So you follow, like, Joe and Jerry, who are, like, a tap dancing duo. Is that
in
what they
the
are?
musical?
Yeah, in the musical. But
No,
also
they play
their instruments. I know, but they're also, like, the tip tappers. That's how they find them.
I like all of the above.
Did you miss that part?
No, like, yes, they do. They are doing, like, a variety show, I think, but they, like, how they get cast on that, like, in that band, how they join.
I know, it's for their musical instruments.
It's for their musical instruments.
But when they're trying to play in the club at first, which is, like, the first kind of, like, little glimpse of, like, racism segregated club scene, it's that they're, like, the tapping duo, and that they can't do this with, like, out their brother type thing. So maybe it is just, like, variety is actually the right word to describe that.
Saxophone and bass, but then they also do have a tap dancing act, tip tap, so multi-talented.
I was like, was I watching a different musical?
No, you weren't. You weren't watching a different musical. They definitely did tip tap.
Because that's how they figure them out when they say that it's, like, the tip tapping trio, and they're like, oh my god, there's only 2 people that in the world that could do that. Right. So anyway, all that to say is that, like, they basically witness, like, a mafia murder is what I'll call that. And then they, like, go on the run. And going on the run means that they, like, dress as women to become a part of this, like, all-female band that has, like, a lead singer in Sugarcane. I forget her normal name. She says it once at the end. But I don't,
Gertrude something.
Mud?
Yeah.
Something like that.
That sounds right.
And then you kind of just, like, watch them, I don't know, like, be a part of this band, but also at the same time, the character of Jerry, who's, like, now Daphne is getting, like, more and more comfortable as this person and doesn't necessarily want to, like, go back to their old life, whereas Joe, playing Josephine, wants to go back to being Joe because he ends up falling in love with Sugar, and, like, there's that whole relationship. There's, I don't know, many, like, a scene where you are almost caught many times, but then they're not caught. We're taking on and off wigs. We're putting on and on off and on dresses. Anyway, all this to say that, like, wow, what's the end of this musical? That they kind of just, like, all get what they want?
Yes, it is. It does follow the structure of a classic musical in that it ends in a pretty neat bow. Our villains, Spats, our villain is, you know, gets his comeuppance, doesn't get what he wants, and everyone else ends up with their love. Everyone is very understanding and happy, and we just, like, drive into the sunset a bit.
Yeah. I think also in the movie it took place in Florida, and in the musical it takes place in Southern California, but I think that's for, like, racial reasons.
Sure.
I was reading about. But yeah, all this to say that, like, this adaptation written by Matthew Lopez and Amber Ruffin, there's a Deadline article from 2021 because Amber Ruffin, like, worked with Seth Meyers. Does she still work with Seth Meyers?
I think yes.
I'm not sure. But anyway, she said, I'm so thrilled to be working with the real Broadway legends, Matthew Lopez, Casey Nicola, Mark Shaman, and Scott Whitman on this honestly groundbreaking project. This is truly a different kind of musical, and I can't wait for people to see it. Like, I don't know about that, Amber. I don't think it's a truly different kind of musical, but sure.
Did you know Amber Ruffin is working on Bigfoot, the musical?
Oh my God, with Gray Henson. That photo was my favorite thing I saw recently. I just need to say that. What a costume.
I was in shock. Yeah.
Maybe I'll like place it right here, right now, so people can see it when watching on YouTube. Anyway, then Matthew Lopez said, when I was first approached to write Some Like It Hot, the idea that convinced me it was something worth doing, besides getting to work with Casey, Mark, and Scott, was the opportunity to take a classic comedy about Prohibition-era America and rethink it for a contemporary audience as a queer BIPOC writer. It is an exciting proposition to create a show with characters whose race is instrumental, not incidental to the story. Now, I agree with all of that. I just, like, don't think we're, you know, like, bending the mold here. This is a pretty standard, like, mold for a golden age musical, like, from top to bottom. Like, nothing feels, like, out of the ordinary to me on this. I don't think that... Yeah, go ahead.
No, you finish and I'll comment.
I was going to say, I don't think that the writing feels, like, heavy-handed, which is a good thing to me. I think it could have felt, like, much more heavy-handed than what they were going for. But I wouldn't say that this is, like, a crazy departure from, like, a classical musical style.
No, I think the one thing that is definitely done with a, you know, modern lens is the idea that Jerry is then going to live as Daphne and ends up with a man, and that is kind of questioned slightly throughout the second act, but is not really pushed back against that hard. And I think that is where they are doing, that is where they are kind of pushing the boundaries of what would be in a regular classic old golden age musical, and what sets it apart. And I also think that they felt that it was a priority to have that instead of just having, you know, at the end of the musical, the men take off their dresses and their lives are unchanged.
I mean, this is dumb of me to ask this because both of us haven't seen the movie, but, like, what happens with Jerry at the end? If, like, in this version, Jerry becomes Daphne, ends up with Osgood, but, like, what happens when that isn't written that way?
No, so I'm reading the summary on Wikipedia of the movie, so meanwhile, Daphne tries to get out of her engagement, offering escalating half-true reasons why she and Osgood cannot marry, none of which dissuade him. Exasperated, Jerry rips off his wig and said, "I'm a man," in his normal voice. Still smiling, Osgood replies, "Well, nobody's perfect," confounding Jerry and leaving him speechless. And that's kind of like...
So do they end up together?
I think that's just, you know, it's left open-ended. Wow, this is kind of progressive. Well, nobody's perfect. So true.
Well, because in the musical, it's kind of, we're skipping right to the end here for you know, the plot of Some Like It Hot, but in the musical, when Osgood kind of discovers in the dressing room, it's like a wig moment between Joe. Well, Joe takes off a wig because he's like, I can't do this anymore. Joe's pretending to be Kip, this director, Joe himself, and then Josephine, and he's like... He has, like, a comment insinuating that he knows that he's a man. But then that also comes again later when, like, Daphne says to Osgood, like, I'm not who, like, you think I am. And he's like, no, I know exactly who you are and I don't care. Which seems like maybe happens in the movie as well.
Nobody's perfect, as they say. But, yes, Jerry says, I'm a man at the end. So he is not... you know, non-binary or fluid or, you know, they don't give those words in Some Like It Hot, the musical, because it is still the 1930s and they didn't have that language at that time. But, you know, it is implying that they are, you know, maybe want to live as a woman or make the choice every day. Whereas in the movie, you know, Jerry explicitly is like, no, I'm a man. But they could still be happy and in love. I don't know.
Yeah, I just don't think that, like, I think when it was, like, first announced that this was happening however many years ago and that they were, like, bringing in people to, like, write this, like, new story, I think I, like, expected a little bit more of, like, character development for the, like, Jerry, Daphne, Geraldine character than we actually get. Like, it's not really, like, an exploration of that character specifically. It's, like, this is a person that's in a cast of X number of people and we get like a tiny glimpse into their life. Yet the way that it was written about years ago was like, this is it. This is the musical that is like pushing the boundaries of a man in a dress. I'm like, is it though? I'm not sure that it is, because Joe is still giving us the man in a dress musical that we're used to.
I think when they were like listening to Casey Nicholaw and Mark Shaman and Scott Whitman and Matthew Lopez talk about this musical, I think what their goal was, and we can talk about whether we think that's successful or not, but their goal was to not have the comedy mined from men wearing dresses, but to have the comedy. And I also want to acknowledge that J. Harrison Ghee, the original cast, like identifies as non-binary, but just for like the simplicity of this conversation, but that they wanted the comedy to be mined from the circumstances that they were thrust in, and not necessarily just, you know, the first thought of this is a man wearing a dress, from the audience's perspective. So, and I do think they are in like, you know, it is like farce in some cases, you know, where it, you know, it's hard not to think about, we just saw Mrs. Doubtfire also.
I literally was going to say another man in a dress musical.
Similar scenarios where you're changing in and out of the costume in the same scene back and forth, and, you know, playing on that tightrope with the other characters for the reveal. Like very, very similar tropes used to mine the comedy in both of these shows. I think anytime that we like talk about, again, to use the phrase man in a dress musical, I think back to like our conversation that we had with Robert Marcus about this, and like the intentional I guess conversations that were had for Chicago specifically to not make Mary Sunshine feel like a man in a dress situation. I don't think that this show is like doing a bad thing, because I actually think that like at the end of the day, like if anyone gets to see themselves in the character of Daphne, like that's all that this musical ever wanted. And I know that the person that's playing the role currently has said that like this is the most them they've ever felt on stage. So like that's amazing that this kind of a role can give that to the person. But I just don't think that we're like really truly straying that far away from what we saw with Mrs. Doubtfire. Like so maybe that is what we're talking about here of like the success. Like I know what they're trying to do. I just don't know that for me it was like 100% successful to like really draw the line and separate those two shows from each other. Yes, I do think the comedy is mined from very, very similar places in both of those shows. Because
especially at the beginning of Some Like It Hot, I would say. Like when they first get themselves in the dress, when they first put the wig on, when we sing that song, I'm like, I literally saw this 4 weeks ago at a different theater.
I know. I do want to call, there was an article that came out in the New York Times around the time that Some Like It Hot premiered on Broadway. It was published in September 9th, 2022, and the article is called Some Like It Hot. Some Like It Not. Sorry. Some Like It Not. Are men in dresses still funny? And because this is, you know, a topic of conversation that we've been, you know, frequently going back to. I'll read a quote. This is
also post-Tootsie as well, right?
Yes. They're talking about Doubtfire and Tootsie. Like those came before Some Like It Hot. And then this is kind of, there was also another show on Broadway at the time called Ain't No Mo. I think it was Ain't No Mo. That was also, it was a play, but it also, you know, had the playwright also playing a character who is wearing a dress. They're a flight attendant.
Right.
Disguising themselves as a flight attendant. But I'll read a quote from J. Harrison Ghee in this article. They said, I had never seen the movie prior to getting the audition. After watching it, I definitely had concerns about the tropes used and how those would be addressed in a modern context when we have much more knowledge and sensitivity around LGBTQ issues. But after reading the draft of the script, I saw an opportunity for me to be pushed as an entertainer by playing Jerry, and the opportunity to bring my own non-binary identity on stage. So this is something that, like, they were comfortable with and excited to bring that new lens to. And I don't think we can ignore that at all.
No. I do think this is also, like, not the same year. I want to say it was the next year, Shucked came out, which you'll maybe hear the review of that episode before or after this one. Not sure.
Who knows?
But Alex Newell on Broadway plays Lulu. And I think, like, Alex has played, you know, different characters in their career
with different,
along
like, gender
the way
identities.
With different, yeah, exactly. But I remember that being, like, a conversation, and kind of being tied to the Some Like It Hot of it all, because I believe it was back-to-back nominations for like Jay Helsinki and then Alex Newell. I'm pretty sure like within a year apart from each other. So it was like kind of the conversation. All this to say also Jay Helsinki won the Tony Award for this. Yeah, like I don't know.
It comes down to that having to pick a category at the Tony Awards.
Well, exactly. And we are still here. Like, we are still here. Cola Scola picked a category last year. I'm assuming there's going to be, like, we'll probably get into it in our next couple episodes, but, like, there are people in Cats the Jellicle Ball that probably should not be picking a category that should just be in a non-binary category. So I do think that, like, as much as rewriting and doing shows like this is so helpful in like steps towards like the right direction, we're still like so far away from the Tony Awards ever doing anything about it, I think, personally.
No, and moving to, let's say, genderless categories. I agree. I think they are still very stuck in like the way that it has always been the tradition of these gendered categories. I'm kind of scrolling through the article, the New York Times article, because I think, you know, it's a really interesting conversation. We'll link it in the show notes. There's another quote that I think is interesting because it's by Anna Noguera, who kind of did a play that discussed this topic as well. And it's a bit of a longer quote. But she says, obviously we all love Some Like It Hot. No one is tearing down the film. And it feels like it was actually progressive in its own way, pushing the gender boundaries of the time. So it's like something that was from the 50s at that time was not even scandalous, but something that was introducing audiences to something new. But continuing her quote, but now we've seen those stories so many times that the joke, just for the joke's sake, has gotten old. It's no longer pushing boundaries. The boundaries have already been pushed. I don't want to just dismiss it or get too angry about it when we're all trying our best to make good art. But if the punchline is simply that femininity is funny, that it's silly, it's unserious, and it's always sexual, if the punchline is this is a man in a dress, then I say let's try to do better. I don't think any story is off limits, but I do think every story and subject matter deserve scrutiny. And I think that's where it comes down to, like, there are jokes to be mined from many scenarios, but, you know, if the joke is first thought or it's like, isn't it funny? He's acting like a girl. Then I'm asleep. I'm bored. I'm tired.
Right. And I do think that is the first half of this musical.
For sure. And I think that is where
we get
like
more...
the Joe character sits.
Yes. Well, until we get more into like the inside of Daphne's like brain. But yeah, like it is played for comedy right out of the gate. And we kind of get that for like a good hour and 10 minutes of this almost 3-hour musical.
Oh my God.
Let's get into that.
Let's talk about it. Yeah. So, like, moving beyond that, you know.
Yeah, like, that's one, like, major aspect, I think, of this musical. I think also, like, huge topic of conversation when this first came out. I also think it's funny. Again, this is, like, so naive of me to say this because I've never seen this movie. But I like that quote started with, we all love this movie, and, like, it should have been adapted. I'm like, but there's other stories. Like, I just don't understand... I don't know. I just think that, like, we're at a time period. We've been talking about this for, like, literally off and on for, like, 7 years of this podcast that, like, we are haters of the Man in a Dress musical. Like, we just are.
It does feel often like, you know, the joke is the first thought. Like, that they're not working hard to, you know, make clever jokes because they're relying on the, like, isn't it hilarious? He's doing a high-pitched voice. Isn't it so funny?
Literally.
Isn't it so funny? He's wearing a bra.
He's wearing a wig.
like, no, not particularly, to be honest. But yeah, like, again, at the time that these original movies that these are based on, because of course it's all based on movies. We are not making original musicals, but they're all based on movies. When these movies came out, it was kind of progressive in a way to, like, that performance of gender. But now it feels done. It feels boring. We're not bringing anything new to the conversation, and we're actually maybe harming conversations by, you know, making these jokes.
This is, like, not related, but kind of related. Like, as you were saying that, it made me think of, there's a joke in & Juliet, which was a couple years after Some Like It Hot, when, like, Shakespeare and Anne are fighting about something. And, oh yeah, true, because & Juliet in the West End was earlier. Yeah. But Anne and Shakespeare are, like, fighting about something, and she like claps back at him and basically is like coming from the man who was made famous for having men dress as women in his shows. I don't remember the exact context, but like we've been doing this for years.
Yes, like there is a long history of men playing female characters in theater, in movies. Like this is not new. So yeah, we do have to kind of develop that gag.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I don't think that this is a knock against this musical for like trying to update this story. I just don't think in my mind that it was like done super successfully. I think we could have been like we could have pushed the boundaries a little bit more than we did. All that to say is that like this is almost a 3-hour musical and not much really happens in these like 2 hours and 40-ish minutes with an intermission, but like we're not really doing much. We're kind of just like going in circles, and this band keeps coming out and playing music time and time again in Act 1.
Yes. I mean, again, it's really in the model of a classic musical, and by that, it means a lot of the songs are not necessarily like narratively moving the story forward. We're kind of parking and, you know, doing a wonderful, great performance, and
Sometimes.
then the story's picking up after. Let's say, like, our music is not progressing the story in the way we expect from a modern musical. It is just like I thought a lot about Anything Goes in this. I thought that was kind of
Dirty
the main
Rotten
one, because
was the
Dirty
first one
Rotten,
to me.
which is a more modern musical, but also similarly in that we're kind of scamming, disguising.
I was gonna say that's more for like the heist element. Yeah,
the dynamics of like the main characters.
I will say, like, and I don't normally say this, but for, you know, a Shaman and Whitman score, not memorable, guys, at all.
No.
Like, really not. And I love them. We've talked about them so
know.
many times on this podcast. We are fans. We are Smash fans. I love Hairspray. We did an episode. Wow, maybe I'll link our episode from, like, the pandemic days when we did a Shaman and Whitman deep dive. I love their music. I normally think their music is, like, so catchy. I could not hum you a song other than Let's Be Bad from this musical.
Let's Be Bad. Yeah, I'm trying to think of some memorable moments. You know, Fly, Mariposa Fly. That's sort of memorable. When they're, like, in Mexico.
Oh, yeah. I was like, paint this picture, because I don't remember it by the name.
It's at the beginning of Act 2. They go dancing. Well, no, that's different. They go dancing in Mexico. And that's where Osgood and Daphne, kind of their romance really
begins.
Takes flight.
Yes.
Fly, Mariposa,
Yes.
Fly. Other songs, the song that Sugar sings near the end, is it Ride Out the Storm? I thought that was pretty beautiful. I thought she sounded very good on that. Yeah.
But, like, could you hum that for me right now? I couldn't.
No, not really.
Not the same way we've been humming Telltale Harbor since we saw that.
No, I know. Why can't we let Telltale Harbor go? Why can't we
We'll never
go?
let that go.
No. I do think there is a clear highlight of the musical.
Yes, which let's actually get to that now, and then
Yeah.
we can give some of the more Toronto Star critiques, because we actually agree with a lot of what Joshua Chong says. But there is an amazing 11 o'clock number. Do you want to tell us about this number?
Yes, the iconic sequence called Tip Tap Trouble, which is not sung. It is all movement and tap dancing at the end, where kind of climactically everyone has ended up in the same place. Spats wants Joe and Jerry because he witnessed the murder, but Sugar and Sue and, you know, Osgood and everyone else are trying to, and the Bellboys and everyone are trying to, like, help them escape. And
Not to interrupt you, but as you're saying this, I realize that we gave the worst synopsis of this musical.
Yeah, it's fine.
But go on.
We didn't even do our
I forgot about Sue.
Sue. Who is Sue? Irrelevant. And it's this great sequence with like 4 or 6 doors and tap dancing and just, you know, following of choreography only and movement, following this chase sequence throughout the hotel. And it is the most thrilling part
Pretty
of the
long.
musical. I looked it up. Apparently it's about 5.5 minutes long.
Yeah, for what they're doing.
I felt longer. it felt longer, but in a good way. Like, it felt grand.
Yeah.
Sometimes things, I felt really long, but it felt long in, like, wow, I got enough, like, the exact amount of what I wanted of that.
Yeah.
And it was the most exciting part of the musical. No one was singing. We were just tap dancing. And it just felt so exciting. And it really kind of ended the musical off with, like, a perfect button.
Yes. If that sequence wasn't in this, I think my overall rating of this musical would be much lower than it is. But I do think that like saved the show all the way to the end of, like, what ends up happening is one of the cops ends up in Josephine's outfit, shockingly, to arrest Spats at the very end. And even as Spats is getting carried off going to jail, he's like, wonderful dancing, everybody. Like, it's just kind of like a breaking of the fourth wall moment to just, compliment everybody on, although I will say, and we said this on the night, we were there at opening night, a lukewarm audience who did not give that scene enough credit.
Especially Act 1, everyone was just, people were not feeling it. People were not.
No. But that kind of leads, I guess, to our ensemble, and not sure if I would say this is, like, their fault. I think this is kind of what goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning of this episode of, unfortunately, sometimes what happens with a national tour. But we noticed this in the theater, and then reading the Toronto Star article, this was also pointed out, that our tap dancing, as Steph just put in quotations for listeners only, was like track dancing. I'm not sure. We were just talking about this before we started recording. We were, like, slightly too far away to know if the ensemble was in a tap shoe. I'm going to say they weren't, except for maybe Joe and Daphne and Sugar at moments when they become that, like, trio. Yes. But when the ensemble was tapping, I heard that on track because their feet were not doing what the music was doing.
I spent, I would say, 50% of the musical staring at their feet. I'm a little bit of a tap dancer myself. So anytime they were tapping, I was just intently looking at their feet, trying to figure out if they were actually doing it or not. I think the true answer is 80% of the time they were not tap dancing, but there were a few moments where we were tap dancing, which is a bit disappointing because when you have a Casey Nicholaw musical, when you have tap I'm thinking back to 42nd Street here a few years ago, which, like, I didn't love 42nd Street, but they were tap dancing.
Vibes.
They were tapping.
Vibes of that in this as well.
Yeah, for sure. Those
were
guys
tapping
were tap dancing.
for sure.
And it's so exciting when you have sound being made by everyone on stage.
I was going to say, you know who else was tapping for sure at Shaw Festival? Anything Goes. We were tapping.
100%. We were tapping. We were tap dancing. That's why people were slipping.
I think what was so, you're right, what was so, like, noticeable to me for that is that sometimes when you see a show and it's heavy and tap, there's, like, mics that are at the edge of the stage. Not here. There were no mics here at the edge of the stage for Some Like It Hot. And I do think it is disappointing because, again, to point out the Toronto Star article, Joshua Chong saw this on Broadway. Actually, his headline is, like, pretty good for this. His review is, the headline is, Some Like It Hot was a sizzling hit on Broadway, but its Mervish run is lukewarm at best. And he said that, like, what was so exciting for him and something that he was, like, so looking forward to seeing this for a second time was that, like, phenomenal tap dancing. And also, I don't know if you know the answer to this, but if you do, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe when they did the cast recording, they had them tapping on the recording in the room.
I agree. I remember that as well.
And I remember a video of some sort of, like, the cast, like, on a tap, whatever you call those, mic'd up. Like, it was videos of their feet. And if we're going that far on Broadway, like, it's just so, like, disappointing and feels so budget to me to not do that here. And again, the sound mix at the Ed Mervish is just, like, so bad in general that it was so obvious that it was on track.
Yeah. It's a bit frustrating because it has such its strong impact when we're really tapping, and it really takes away the excitement and the energy when it's on track. Because tapping is part of the music. It is part of the soundscape of a show. And so it's a little bit hollow when it's just on track. On the other hand, like the Globe and Mail, not Aisling Murphy, Alana Lucas said, "Some Like It Hot is fun, airy, and just as memorable as its Hollywood version." So
I know. I read that review as well. She has, similar issues about the sound mix as well.
That sometimes seems like a Toronto issue, like a Mirvish issue specifically.
I agree. However, in this case, we will say Sugar, played by Leandra Ellis Gaston, and Jerry Daphne, played by Tavis Cordell. Her voices are a little thin for this score, I would say. And then in a theater that doesn't have a great mix, the orchestra, which is smaller than it is on Broadway, it's overpowering them. And at some points, when Daphne was singing, I think I turned to you and was like, I can't hear what they're saying, like, at all.
Yeah.
Like, especially if she's towards the back of the stage, like, it's very... But it was interesting because then there would be moments I'm like, oh my God, this, like, really high note that's beautiful and we're really belting, like, where's more of this? With Sugar specifically, I was just, like, not a fan of the way that she was singing a lot of these songs. And I think in comparison to, like, an Adriana Hicks who did it on Broadway, who was such, like, a booming voice, this just felt, like, very thin. Will say, though, that Matt Lohr, who played Joe Josephine, loved him. That man was projecting. Yeah. Thank you for the projection.
Yes, I really liked him as well. He was fun.
I just feel like these days, after, the opera, like, if we're not projecting to the back, I don't want to hear it.
That when... Like, I knew when we saw the opera, but when we were in Ring 5, and I'm like, they're not wearing microphones. Crazy. This is iconic. No, even back to the Globe and Mail review, I have it here. She writes, if there's any disappointment in Some Like It Hot, it's the score by Mark Shaman and lyricist Scott Whitman, which sounds lush and full in Charlie Rosen and Brian Carter's orchestrations, but doesn't deliver much more than eager, generic pastiche. It's not helped by microphone issues that cause a volume imbalance between the leads and result in some of the faster chorus patter getting lost in the tap dancing shuffle.
Yeah. I do know that, like, first preview in Toronto on Reddit, a lot of people were also commenting on the sound mixing, using the words that have been used in the Ed Mirvish Theater before of why do these performers sound like they're underwater. It's just like...
It's just a big house.
It's so weird because when we were, like, not leaving, but, like, waiting to leave, waiting on the side there, and we were, like, directly underneath that speaker, I was like... Where's this for the rest of the theater? Like, this sounds great right now. Our exit music is sounding really big and amazing. And where was that for the rest of the show?
It's hard to optimize it for every spot in the theater. But at the same time, we've been in, Shays at Buffalo, which is a much bigger touring house. And in my opinion, much more awkwardly sized because it's so wide. And we've only been in there a couple times, but I don't remember sound that way that it does here.
Yeah.
But this is like a common issue with Mirvish touring.
And it's not just the Ed Mirvish Theater. I know that there's been issues, the Royal Alex, the Princess of Wales. I believe it's the Princess of Wales that someone said that if you sit in the first 10 rows, like, you're just hearing the people on stage without microphones. But I'm like, don't love that either, guys. Like, I can't remember. It was a couple of years ago. No, because a couple years ago when Wicked came back around, and I was like, what's happening here? Like, I just think that we need to have a good balance between music and, like, vocal. That's my main issue. It's hard when the music is so overpowering that you can't hear the person. And in a show like Wicked, when it was just like dun 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 dun, dun, it's like, I can't hear anything. I can't hear this person singing Popular. Like, please.
Is the ideal spot to sit right in front of the sound box and just...
You know what show sounded amazing? Telltale Harbor from the first row of the mezzanine.
It did. But I think that might be like a prime spot.
Yeah, I will say, like, Anne Juliet up there also sounds pretty good. I don't know. It's a constant issue. Literally, if you've been listening to us since we've been doing this podcast, we've talked about this, like, time and time again, and it's never going to be fixed, but we'll continue to talk about it until the end of time because it's just frustrating.
Apparently it's probably really hard.
Oh, I'm sure it is. But there were so many moments, I can't remember. It's like, it was a big Daphne song, but, like, you and I, with our hands, were like, can we raise the volume, please?
Turn it up.
Turn the mic up. I can't hear anything.
I'm going to stand next to the sound booth next time and just, like...
yeah, tell them to do it. Exactly.
Turn it up.
That's what I said to you. I was like, what are they hearing from back there? Because I know what I'm hearing from here. Are they wearing headphones? Because if they are, they shouldn't be. Take them off.
I literally have no clue. I don't know.
If you're a sound
Maybe
person,
this is something we
and you're listening,
give us some answers.
Comment, please. Other people that were standouts: Osgood, Edward Juvier, loved him. Thought he was so good, so smiley, so fun. And then Sue,
charming,
I thought
character.
Sue had a great voice. DeQuina Moore, who's been around. She's done some Broadway. She was possibly in Donna Summer, or Summer, the Donna Summer musical.
Diva Donna understudy.
So then we probably didn't see her, but we haven't talked.
No,
about
she was. No, it's so interesting. It says Summer is there twice, and one it says Diva Donna, and one it says Diva Donna understudy.
Oh, I
think
see
you could have
that.
just put that in once, girl.
Oh my god, she was also in The Bodyguard.
Bodyguard, Rachel Nikki understudy. We loved The Bodyguard.
We love The Bodyguard. But
She's
yeah,
in Joyful Noise.
all this to say, it's not bad. It's kind of exactly what I expected it to be, yet I'm still, slightly disappointed, but I really think that's the tap dancing of it all that I'm the most disappointed in.
Yeah. Because, okay, if I'm not here for memorable music, at least I'm here for a beautiful Casey Nicola, tap danced, choreographed
Extravaganza.
show. Yeah, exactly. And then to get kind of that also be a little half-assed, it's just kind of, okay, so what did I come for? Why am I here?
Exactly.
For the hors d'oeuvres after? They were cold, okay?
And we were so stressed that whole party that the ushers who were doubling as waiters were going to drop that blue drink on everybody. It was crazy.
I was really concerned about my pink jacket. I'm I cannot have blue curacao on this later. Whatever it was. I don't know what was in that drink. It was very blue, though.
A big plus, though, I guess, for the Toronto audiences that they're now inviting to, media night, if you say that there's a theme party, people dress up, so that's fun.
It is really fun, actually. It is.
Not us, but people dressed up, so that was fun.
We're professional. No, but I love it that people come in themed outfits. I think it's really fun.
Yeah.
I think that brings us to the end. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so should we rate it?
Yeah, let's rate it. Okay, what is my criteria?
Metric. I know, I'm trying to think of...
Okay, I'm going to go with 6 out of 10 wigs. Just
Great.
wigs in general.
I'm also going to give this a 6 out of 10. I'll go with the bass. The bass was, had a moment. Oh, also want to shout out, sorry, there is one ensemble member that I would like to shout out, who was also kind of a bit of a character, Minnie. Devin Hadsell, who played Minnie, who was the drummer of the band. You could have fooled me. I thought she was drumming for real. So congratulations on your rehearsal for learning to play the drums. Love that.
That's so fun.
I wish the band would have come out and bowed. We've been doing that a lot recently, and that would have been a fun opportunity to do here. But they had the big exit music, I guess, to play on the way out. So
yes, they're busy.
That was gonna happen. Anyway, Some Like It Hot is not playing in Toronto anymore when you're listening to this episode, but I can guarantee that it is probably coming to a city near you if you're listening in the States. And I do believe that there are plans for the West End, although Wikipedia says 2025.
Yes, but there's no further information. So,
yeah. It doesn't seem like it's that... Well, maybe... I was going to say, is it that difficult of a show? Is an expensive show to bring? Not if we're tapping on track. Then we don't need tap dancers.
Tap dancers cost the same as regular dancers.
No, I know. It is kind of a large ensemble.
It's harder to find.
Yeah.
It's harder to find, for sure. Because not everyone who dances learns tap.
Right. But I guess you don't need that for this musical in the first place if you're on the national tour. So sorry to all of them. All that to say, that's our thoughts on Some Like It Hot. And now it's time for our Obsession of the Week. Okay, Steph, what do you have?
Okay, my obsession is for a show that I've only been kind of sort of following the behind the scenes stuff on. It's playing in New York at the Orpheum Theater. And it is 11 to midnight. And what I know about it is that it was created by TikTok dancers, Cost and Mayer. Are you familiar?
Of course.
of course, and Hideaway Circus. So it's about a New Year's Eve party where 7 friends dance through memories, maybes, and the question of who they'll be when the clock strikes midnight. And what's intrigued me about it so much is, one, Cost and Mayor themselves star in it, and they're hosting a New Year's Eve party, but that the story is told, you know, completely through dancing. And that is always something that's really exciting to me. Just a lot of times dancers are in the background or the ensemble kind of supporting parts and, you know, come in and do choreography already set. But in this show, the dancers got to kind of create their characters and their roles, and the dancing is the, you know, like main storytelling tool. So even though I haven't seen it because I'm not in New York, my obsession this week is just like all the behind the scenes content I've been watching, like on TikTok, on YouTube, the trailers for 11 to Midnight playing at the Orpheum Theater until April 19th.
I feel like I don't even know if this will be out by that time, but
That's okay.
That's fine. I feel like they got into this because, if you remember, I don't know if it was last year, maybe it was 2 years ago, but they choreographed like Waitress somewhere, like Waitress the musical, and I feel like that's how they were kind of like put more into like the theater scene that way. But yes, I watched
the idea of storytelling on stage through dance. Yeah.
I watched their TikTok videos where they're like dancing to like the Microsoft Word like startup music on a daily basis.
They're so creative. They're so creative. It's like street tile. It's like genre bending. You know, they're not stuck to one specific genre. I'm a fan of them, and I don't know. I hope this has a life beyond this one, you know, smaller production, and that we get to see it in other places, or they tour it or something. But yeah, that's my obsession this week.
Love it.
What about you, Tara?
Okay, my obsession this week, and this is kind of like a series that I've spoken about before, but as soon as I heard this, I was like, wow, how can I not talk about this? Speaking of Wicked, Jordan Litz, who is the current Fiyero on Broadway. I don't know if he's the current Fiyero on time of episode release, because, again,
I think he's left.
Episode is coming out.
I think he has already left. Yeah.
Oh my god, this man was like a marathon runner as well. Like, he was doing it all for a long time.
He was there for so long.
Anyway, he was responsible for putting together the Swankified Stairwell Sessions, which, again, I've spoken about previously. But basically what it is that he kind of rewrites harmony lines for, like, different versions of the songs from Wicked. And the one that I am obsessed with is for Defying Gravity. And in this stairwell session, it is new Elphaba, I'm pretty sure, Carrie Renee Fuller, Mary-Kate Morrissey, and Ali Trim. And I, along with everybody that commented on this video, has watched it like literally 300 times. And he does the most like beautiful, they're not harmony lines, they're like dissonance lines, which is such like beautiful music when it sounds like not bad, but it does sound kind of like off,
like jarring,
kind of like sort of jarring, very like minor forward, kind of like haunting in a way. Anyway, it's one of these songs that like when you listen to, I'll put in the part specifically, but it's like instant chills. Wow, now that he's gone, I'm gonna miss these because I loved watching these every like month.
Who's taken over?
That's the thing, like Mary-Kate Morrissey like came back to do it with this crew. Like she's been gone for like a while and like came back. So, but yeah, I didn't realize that like Jordan Litz is responsible for like literally writing the sheet music for this as well.
Oh, wow.
So,
so talented.
He has like really taken this seriously. Someone on TikTok, and I agree with them, was like, hey, can we put all of these covers into like a cover CD and release this? Wow. Because that would be like really fun and a fun way to, you know, actually have a physical copy of these like Swankified Stairwell Sessions. Anyway, love those. That's my session this week. That's our thoughts on Some Like It Hot. That's it. I don't know what's next, and I don't know what's before this. So you'll just have to maybe go back into our back catalog and listen to anything else if you want to listen to more of that of us. So you can, you know, do that by subscribing to our podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also watch us on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe. And leave us a comment. More people have been leaving us a comment lately. Someone recently commented, which you should go back and look at, on our Kimberly Akimbo episode and gave their top 10 ranking for the 10 musicals in the last 10 years.
I know. This was an interesting conversation that we kind of had on the fly there. And I'm curious what other people's thoughts are on the top, like how they would rank the past 10 years. Maybe this is something that we should like update every year as one musical drops out and a new musical comes in. Something interesting to think about.
Yeah.
Just taking the temperature of modern musical theater. You can also follow us on Instagram at Off2BOA Podcast with the number 2, or on TikTok at Off2Broadway, and we're post some interesting things there, maybe.
We got to post more interesting things there.
I know. You're talking to me.
And we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.